What happens when one of the world's biggest movie stars walks onto a daytime talk show set expecting a warm welcome, only to find himself cornered by pointed questions that ignite a storm no one saw coming? What happens when The Rock, Hollywood's golden man of charisma and charm, suddenly becomes the center of a fiery exchange that leaves the View's audience stunned and its hosts scrambling to regain control? You're about to witness that very moment. But before we dive into this shocking confrontation, make sure you hit subscribe to Celebrity Narrator right now, and don't forget to like and comment below, because you won't want to miss the wild turns this story takes. The studio was alive with electricity that morning. The View's set glowed in rich tones of blue and gold, the polished wooden desk shining under the hot studio lights. The audience clapped, hooped, and even whistled as the announcer's voice boomed. Please welcome Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. The cameras cut to the stage entrance, where The Rock appeared in a perfectly tailored gray suit, shoulders squared, smile wide, exuding that larger-than-life presence that had made him a household name. He raised his hand in a signature wave, flashing that famous grin, and the crowd erupted. Some stood, others held up their phones, recording every second. He slapped a few hands, clapped a fan on the shoulder, then made his way toward the panel. At the table sat the hosts: Whoopi Goldberg with her calm but sharp eyes, Joy Behar with her ever-ready wit, Ana Navarro leaning forward with a curious smile, and Sunny Hostin with a look that was already more piercing than welcoming. The Rock shook hands, hugged Whoopi, nodded to Joy, and took his seat in the middle. At first, it looked like the usual light-hearted banter. Joy cracked a joke about his arms barely fitting into the suit, the audience laughed, and Dwayne chuckled along. But then the mood began to shift. Sunny Hostin leaned forward, her gaze narrowing slightly. "Dwayne," she began, her voice measured but cutting through the laughter, "you've built a career on being this family-friendly, relatable guy. But lately, some of your choices and some of your comments have raised eyebrows. Do you think you've been a little out of touch?" The Rock's smile didn't fade immediately, but it softened, his eyes flicking to her, then to the audience, as though weighing his response. The crowd quieted, sensing a tension forming. "Well," Dwayne said slowly, adjusting his cufflinks, "I've always believed in speaking from the heart. Not everyone's gonna like what I say, but I've never tried to be anyone other than myself." Sunny's brow arched. "But when you joke about political issues or dismiss criticism as noise, doesn't that undermine the image you've spent years building? Some people feel let down by you." The audience murmured. Whoopi shifted in her chair, watching closely. The Rock leaned forward, his deep voice resonating. "Sunny, let me be clear. I respect criticism. I respect people's opinions. But I've earned where I am by being authentic. And if that makes some people uncomfortable, that's on them, not me." The air in the studio thickened. Sunny didn't back down. Her voice rose slightly, sharp as a knife. "But isn't that a cop-out? You've got millions of fans who look up to you. Don't you owe them more than just brushing it off?" A ripple ran through the audience. Some gasped, others applauded. Dwayne's jaw tightened. His smile disappeared, replaced by a flicker of something raw, unfiltered. "With all due respect, Sunny," he said, his tone lowering like a storm cloud rolling in, "I don't owe anyone a fake version of me. I'm not a politician. I'm not running for office. I'm The Rock. I've fought my way from nothing, built myself up with sweat, blood, and grit. And if I don't fit into a neat little box that makes people feel comfortable, too bad." The crowd roared. Half the audience clapped wildly, the other half sat stunned, the tension slicing the room in two. Joy let out a half laugh, clearly trying to ease the mood, but the cameras stayed locked on Sunny and Dwayne. Sunny's eyes burned with determination, and she leaned in closer. "But Dwayne, don't you think you're being defensive? If you can't handle tough questions, maybe you shouldn't sit at this table." That line hit like a grenade. The audience gasped loudly, a collective intake of breath. A few people shouted, "Oh!" The tension snapped taut like a wire ready to break. For the first time, The Rock's composure cracked. His voice, usually smooth and measured, cut sharper than anyone expected. "You think I can't handle tough questions? Sunny, I've been beaten, bruised, buried in this business, and I'm still standing. You want tough? I eat tough for breakfast. But don't mistake being straightforward for being defensive. That's a rookie mistake." A wave of cheers erupted from the back rows. The energy inside the studio shifted again, becoming volatile, unpredictable. Sunny's lips pressed into a thin line, but her eyes never wavered. She wasn't about to retreat. "Then prove it," she shot back. Because right now, what I'm seeing is a man more interested in protecting his ego than having a real conversation. Whoopi's eyes widened. Joy's mouth opened as if to step in, but the words caught in her throat. The Rock leaned forward, elbows on the table, voice dropping low enough to make the audience lean in. You want real? I'll give you real. I've broken bones for this career. I've sacrificed family time, health, even my sanity at times. So don't sit there and tell me I'm hiding behind my ego. The truth is, people love to build you up, then tear you down the second you're not perfect. And I'll be damned if I let anyone, on this stage or anywhere else, decide who I'm supposed to be. The audience went wild, standing to their feet, clapping, some even screaming his name. But others sat in stunned silence, eyes locked on the brewing clash between Hollywood's strongest man and the View's fiercest interrogator. The cameras zoomed in on Sunny's face. She didn't flinch, but the faintest smirk touched her lips, as if daring him to go further. And at that moment, the segment that was supposed to be a light-hearted chat about his upcoming film transformed into something far more dangerous. A battle of wills that was only just beginning. The studio felt different now. The laughter, the warm applause, the sense of daytime television comfort, it was gone. Replaced instead by the thick air of confrontation, a silence heavy enough to make every shifting chair, every cough, every nervous laugh sound amplified. Sunny Hostin kept her eyes locked on Dwayne Johnson, her expression firm but simmering with something more than just journalistic curiosity. It wasn't just a question anymore, it was personal. Whoopi leaned back in her chair, her dreadlocks falling around her shoulders as her gaze shifted cautiously between the two. Okay, she said with that slow, deliberate tone that always demanded the room's attention. Let's all take a breath. It's a talk show, not WrestleMania. That earned a laugh from some corners of the audience, but it quickly faded. No one was in the mood for comic relief. Not when the tension on stage burned hotter than the studio lights. The Rock's deep chest rose and fell as he pulled back slightly, nodding at Whoopi, but his eyes never left Sunny. I respect that, Whoopi, he said, his voice calmer now but still thrumming with intensity. But sometimes when people come at you with fire, you've got to meet them with fire. That's the only language that gets heard. Sunny didn't flinch. She leaned in, her voice tight, deliberate, every syllable chosen with precision. So you're saying criticism is an attack? That anyone who dares to hold you accountable should expect, what, the Rock treatment? Because you sound less like a role model and more like someone who's afraid of being vulnerable. The audience shifted uneasily, some nodding, others shaking their heads. Phones lifted into the air, recording what everyone instinctively knew was a viral moment in the making. Dwayne's jaw set hard. Vulnerable? He repeated, his laugh sharp, humorless. Sunny, you want vulnerable? Try growing up watching your family lose everything. Try moving 20 times before you turn 16, because you can't pay rent. Try being told you'll never make it, not in football, not in wrestling, not in Hollywood. You want vulnerable? That's my life story. And I turned all of that into strength. I don't apologize for that. The crowd erupted, some clapping loudly, others murmuring with sympathy. But Sunny wasn't done. Her voice rose, cutting through the applause. But strength isn't the same as shutting people down. You can't bulldoze your way through every conversation, Dwayne. Sometimes strength is admitting you don't have all the answers. Sometimes strength is saying, I messed up. Can you do that? Can you admit you've messed up? That question landed like a punch to the gut. The audience let out a collective gasp, and Joy Behar muttered under her breath. Oh boy. For a moment, the Rock froze. His face hardened, but behind his eyes there was movement, thought, conflict, something shifting. The cameras caught every flicker of emotion, every shadow that crossed his features. And then he spoke, his voice low, controlled, almost dangerous in its steadiness. I've messed up more times than I can count. I've failed, I've hurt people, I've made mistakes. But the difference is, I've never run from them. I've never let anyone else define me by them. You want me to say I've messed up? Fine. I've messed up. But don't confuse accountability with bowing down to every critic who thinks they know me. The studio exploded into cheers, whistles, and scattered boos. It was chaos. Exactly the kind of chaos that producers dread but audiences live for. Sunny's lips tightened. That's not bowing down, Dwayne. That's called being human. But maybe the problem is, you've spent so long playing the Rock that you don't know where Dwayne Johnson begins and the character ends. The words sliced like glass. Even Whoopi's eyes widened. The crowd gasped so loudly it was almost deafening. The Rock leaned forward, his massive frame casting a shadow across the table. Be very careful, Sunny, he said, his voice deep, rumbling, almost primal. Because you're not just talking about a character. You're talking about my life. And nobody gets to sit across from me and tell me who I am. The tension hit its peak. For a split second, it felt like the studio itself had stopped breathing. Whoopi raised her hands, her voice breaking through like a gavel. All right, enough. Both of you. Her tone was stern, commanding. The voice of someone who had seen decades of heated debates, but knew this one was spinning into dangerous territory. This is not what we do here. We talk, we debate, we don't tear each other apart. Ana Navarro finally chimed in, her voice carrying a mix of nervousness and concern. Yeah, guys, maybe let's dial it back. The viewers at home probably just spilled their coffee. A ripple of laughter moved through the audience, but it was shaky, uncertain, a temporary reprieve from the firestorm unfolding on stage. Dwayne sat back, his chest heaving, his face flushed under the hot lights. Sunny, however, remained composed, her eyes steady, unyielding. The battle of wills was far from over. And then, as if to pour gasoline on the flames, a voice from the audience shouted, "Go get her, Rock!" The crowd burst into laughter and cheers, but the comment only deepened the rift. Dwayne chuckled, shaking his head, but Sunny turned sharply toward the audience, her expression stern. "This isn't a fight," she said firmly, her voice rising above the noise. "This is a conversation." But her words fell flat. The energy in the studio had shifted into something uncontrollable, something raw. Dwayne's deep voice cut back in, softer this time but no less intense. "Sunny, you're right about one thing. It's not a fight, but it's also not a one-way interrogation. I came here to promote my film, to talk about stories that inspire people. Instead, I'm sitting here defending my right to be myself. And maybe that's the real problem. People don't want the truth. They want a version of me they can control." That line hit hard. The audience roared, some standing, clapping wildly, others shaking their heads in disapproval. Sunny exhaled sharply, almost in disbelief. "Control," she repeated. "No, Dwayne. People just want honesty. They want to believe in you. But when you sit there acting like criticism is beneath you, you make it hard for them to trust that the man they admire is real." Dwayne's eyes narrowed, his voice a whisper that somehow carried across the entire studio. "The man they admire is real. You just don't like what that looks like when it doesn't fit your script." The room fell into stunned silence once again. And in that silence, the battle lines were drawn. It was no longer just an interview. It was a showdown, a collision between image and reality, between expectation and authenticity. The kind of moment that would live on in clips, in headlines, in endless debates across social media. And it was only the beginning. The silence in the studio was unbearable. Cameras zoomed in tight on the Rock's face, capturing every twitch of his jaw, every flicker in his eyes. Across from him, Sunny Hostin sat motionless, her lips pressed in a thin line, her hands folded neatly on the desk as if anchoring herself against the storm. The audience seemed frozen in place, half of them clutching their phones, the other half whispering nervously. The air conditioning hummed faintly, but it wasn't enough to cool the heat radiating from the stage. Joy Behar, usually the first to diffuse tension with a quip, finally broke the silence. "Well, this turned into the smackdown a lot quicker than I thought," she muttered with a forced laugh. The audience chuckled uneasily, grateful for a release. But neither Dwayne nor Sunny smiled. Sunny finally leaned forward, her voice calm but edged like a blade. "Dwayne, here's what I think. You're a global icon. People don't just watch your movies, they watch how you carry yourself, how you use your platform. And sometimes it feels like when the tough questions come, you turn it into a performance. Like right now. That's not vulnerability. That's theater." The audience murmured, some nodding, others shaking their heads. The Rock's eyes narrowed, his deep voice rumbling low. "A performance? Sunny, I don't need to perform. This," he jabbed his thumb into his chest, the veins in his arm visible even under his suit jacket. "This is who I am. Every word I've said tonight is real. Just because it doesn't fit into the version of me you want doesn't make it fake." Sunny held her ground. "Then answer this. If you're so real, why dodge accountability? Why not just say, yes, I was wrong here, I went too far there? Instead, you flex your muscles, puff your chest, and turn it into a speech. That's not real, Dwayne. That's branding." The audience gasped. A few clapped in support of Sunny, while others booed. Someone shouted from the back, "Leave him alone." The Rock leaned closer, his voice dropping to an almost growl. "Let me tell you something, Sunny. When I was broke, living in a tiny apartment with $7 in my pocket, nobody cared about my mistakes. Nobody asked me to be accountable. They told me I was a failure, period. I climbed out of that with no help from anyone at this table. And now that I'm here, you want me to sit back and admit I'm not good enough? You want me to make people comfortable by pretending I don't believe in myself? That's not happening. Not today. The crowd roared, standing to their feet, half cheering, half jeering. The studio felt less like a talk show and more like an arena. Sunny's expression didn't crack. Her voice sharpened. No one is asking you to pretend. We're asking you to be accountable. You say you're authentic, but authenticity without humility is just arrogance. And right now, that's what you're giving us. That word, arrogance, landed like a slap. The audience gasped so loudly it felt like the walls shook. Whoopi leaned in, her voice raised. All right, we've had enough fireworks for one day. But it was too late. The Rock's composure finally snapped. He pushed back from the desk slightly, his massive frame towering even as he stayed seated. His voice thundered, echoing across the studio like a command. Arrogant? You want to call me arrogant? Fine. I'll wear that. But don't sit here and act like I don't care about my fans, about my work, about being a role model. I've carried this weight on my back for years. Movies, wrestling, business, charity. I've given everything I have, and you sit there and reduce it all to arrogance? That's insulting, Sunny. To me, and to everyone who's ever believed in me. The audience exploded, some standing and chanting rock. Rock! Rock! While others booed, their voices colliding into pure chaos. Producers could be seen off stage, frantically waving at the camera crew, trying to decide whether to cut to commercial. Sunny's face flushed for the first time, but her voice never wavered. Dwayne, if you truly cared, you wouldn't be yelling over me. You'd listen. That's what people want from you. Not speeches, not slogans, not thunder. Just listening. The Rock stared at her, breathing heavily, his fists clenching and unclenching on the desk. The veins in his temple throbbed, his face a mixture of rage and hurt. And then he laughed. Not a warm laugh, not his usual charismatic chuckle, but something cold, sharp, almost disbelieving. You know what, Sunny? Maybe you're right. Maybe people don't want The Rock. Maybe they want some watered-down version of me, some puppet who nods and smiles and says exactly what they want to hear. But let me tell you this. I'd rather walk away from this industry tomorrow than become that. The audience went wild. Some clapped furiously, others shouted angrily, and phones rose higher, capturing every second. Clips of this would flood Twitter, Instagram, TikTok within minutes. Whoopi finally slammed her hands on the table, her voice cutting like steel. Enough! This is not productive. We're supposed to be having a conversation, not a war. But the war had already been declared. The Rock sat back in his chair, his chest heaving, his eyes locked on Sunny like a man unwilling to concede an inch. Sunny met his stare, her own expression fierce, unyielding. Neither would break, neither would bend. Joy muttered under her breath. Well, there goes the book club segment. Anna gave a nervous laugh, but the tension swallowed it whole. The Rock turned back toward the audience, raising his voice so everyone could hear. Let me ask you, do you want the truth or do you want a puppet? The audience erupted in chaos, half screaming truth, and clapping wildly, the other half booing or shouting back at him. It was madness. Daytime TV turned into gladiator combat. Sunny folded her arms, her final words for the segment calm but cutting. The truth isn't about volume, Dwayne. It's about honesty. And maybe one day you'll see the difference. The camera caught The Rock's face, anger, defiance, and just the faintest trace of pain, quickly masked by the armor of his persona. And then, mercifully, the red light on the main camera blinked. The producers had finally done it. They cut to commercial. The screen faded out, but the sound of the audience, shouting, clapping, booing, lingered, a haunting echo of what had just erupted. This wasn't just a talk show moment. This was a cultural earthquake. And by the time the commercial break ended, the fallout would already be flooding the outside world. The View returned from commercial, but the air had shifted forever. The hosts sat rigidly, their practiced smiles thin, their eyes betraying the weight of what had just transpired. The audience, though calmer now, still buzzed with restless energy. People whispered, gestured wildly, some still clutching their phones, no doubt firing off tweets and clips before the cameras had even come back on. Whoopi, ever the anchor, spoke first. Her voice was firm but tired, the voice of someone who had carried more storms than she could count. We're back. And, well, sometimes conversations get heated. That's what this table is about. But at the end of the day, we respect our guests, and we respect each other, even if we don't always agree. The Rock sat in silence, his body still tense, jaw clenched, eyes fixed forward. The audience clapped, but it was scattered, uneven, like applause at the end of a difficult play. Sunny, composed but clearly shaken, adjusted her notes and avoided eye contact with him. The remainder of the segment limped along. Joy cracked jokes. Anna tried to bring levity, but the shadow of that clash hung over everything. Dwayne answered questions about his film in clipped, professional tones, his charisma dialed down, his warmth absent. The air never recovered. And when the cameras finally cut for the last time, the moment didn't end. It exploded. Within hours, clips of the confrontation flooded social media. The hashtags trended worldwide. Hashtag The Rock on the View, hashtag Sunny vs. Rock, hashtag Daytime Smackdown. Millions watched the clips, dissecting every glance, every word, every inflection. Twitter became a battlefield. Sunny exposed The Rock for who he really is, arrogant and defensive, one tweet declared, racking up thousands of likes. Sunny was out of line. The Rock doesn't owe her anything. Respect the man, another countered, with an equal flood of support. Memes spread like wildfire. Someone posted a split-screen image of The Rock glaring at Sunny with the caption, "Finally, The Rock has met his match." Others edited in WWE commentary over the clips, turning the debate into a mock wrestling match. Cable news picked it up by the afternoon. CNN's panelists debated whether The Rock had shown his true colors or whether Sunny had crossed a line. Fox News framed it as Hollywood clashing with daytime TV. Entertainment Tonight ran it on loop, teasing, "The Rock loses his cool. Has America's most beloved star finally cracked?" But the most powerful reactions came from fans themselves. On Instagram and TikTok, people posted teary-eyed videos, some saying they felt let down by Dwayne's arrogance, others defending him as a man simply standing up for himself. The comments sections overflowed with arguments, insults, and emotional pleas. By evening, The View's official YouTube channel uploaded the segment. Within minutes, the comments exploded. Sunny was the only one brave enough to call him out. Dwayne carried himself like a king. She tried to drag him down, and he didn't let her. "This is the most uncomfortable interview I've ever seen. I couldn't look away." Inside Hollywood, whispers began to stir. Studio executives watched closely, wondering how this would affect The Rock's box office draw. Publicists weighed in, some praising him for his authenticity, others criticizing him for losing control. And Sunny, she faced her own wave of backlash and support. Some hailed her as fearless, a truth teller in the face of celebrity power. Others accused her of ambushing a guest, of disrespecting someone who had come in good faith to promote his work. For Dwayne, the fallout was immediate. His team issued no statement, fueling even more speculation. He posted nothing on social media for 24 hours, a silence louder than words. But when he finally broke it, the message was short, raw, and direct. A black and white photo of him in the gym, sweat dripping, eyes fierce, with the caption, "I'll always be me, no matter what." Millions liked it. Millions argued about it. The storm only grew. And in living rooms, coffee shops, and office break rooms across America, people replayed the clip again and again. Some laughed, some cringed, some shouted at their screens. But no one looked away. Because this wasn't just an interview. It was a collision of two forces. One man who built himself into an untouchable icon, and one host determined to strip away the armor and demand the truth. And when those two forces collided, sparks flew that burned far beyond the walls of that studio. In the end, everyone asked the same question. Did The Rock finally reveal a side of himself the world wasn't ready to see? Or did Sunny push too hard, crossing a line between journalism and provocation? That's the power of moments like this. They don't end when the cameras stop rolling. They live on in the arguments, the memes, the headlines, the whispers. And now I want to hear from you. Whose side are you on, The Rock or Sunny? Did this clash expose arrogance or authenticity? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, because I know you have an opinion. And don't forget to subscribe to Celebrity Narrator for more explosive, cinematic breakdowns of the most shocking moments in pop culture. Because if you thought this was intense, just wait until you see what comes next.